Should be on the bottom. There you go.
Yeah. Hold on one second. The projector just went off. Just give me one more second. Oh no, it's back on. No. Huh.
Hi, everybody. I'm a single dad tonight. It's hard. I'm here
Where's the wife?
skiing and drinking, which she deserves. But here, it's been a day.
That's kind of interesting. We just lost the projector in town. So I'm gonna see if I can, all right.
Maybe the bulb died.
Yeah, there's been a message that said change the filter that I think began appearing in 2018. All right, it's 6:03, calling to order the meeting, regular monthly meeting of the EDC on February 3rd. I've shared the agenda. Additions or deletions, we'll have citizen comments as always. If there are comments that aren't related to our agenda, please make them at the beginning. Otherwise, if you can hold them, hopefully there'll be time allowing to let people comment throughout. We have 5 issues to talk about, all really around the grant process. Sorry, 4 of them around the grant process, and 1 a discussion anticipating an issue that we may face in the summer and the fall about dealing with the crush of visitors. So it's basically going to be a policy making and brainstorming discussion type of session today. We don't have any specific budget dollars to allocate. We're really just deciding on the grant process and looking ahead to our annual meeting in a month and a half, and talking a little bit about how we might intend to make decisions then. We also have an update from the housing working group, who have been doing a lot of work, and it's sort of a major priority. This is not related to the grant process, but there's just a lot of work done, and we want them to, the group wanted to give an update. If there are any other work group updates, if we have time, we can deal with those at the end. Are there any additions or deletions to that agenda? And I'm not sure now because the projector is out, so please.
Joe DiNatale's got his hand raised, John.
Okay, Joe, go ahead. Thank you. If someone could sort of monitor that. Joe, go ahead.
I'm curious, John, do you have a volume control on your end? Because mine is full blast and I can barely hear you guys.
I think the rest of us can hear okay.
Hey,
I think,
Yeah,
and I can't.
Joey
turn up
sounds
my-
good to me, Joe.
I'll figure it out. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Hold on one more second. Everything is failing here. I see the problem.
Joe, you may want to lower your hand so next time you raise it, we know you're
Oh, yeah.
raising it.
I see. It turns out that it works better when the plug is actually in the wall. Okay. So then before we go on to citizen comments and the other items on the agenda, I'd like to introduce Marion Abrams. And Marion, we're a little messed up here. There you are. Marion was appointed to the EDC at the last select board meeting. Welcome. And do you want to just introduce yourself briefly and take 2 minutes, 1.5 minutes, give us your background and why you're interested and so forth.
1.5 minutes. Okay. Oh, I'm getting an echo.
Anyone who's not talking, if you can mute, that'd be great.
Yeah. Go ahead, Marion.
So quick intro, I'm happy to be part of this. I've attended a couple of the meetings to observe, and I love the mix of pragmatism and optimism that I've seen so far. I lived in the town of Pittsfield, Vermont, just about 40 minutes from here for 28 years, and I moved to Woodstock just before everything shut down in the pandemic. And so I was very involved in the community there, and I'm hoping to contribute in a positive way here. My work background is video production and podcasting. I'm a producer, a coach, and a consultant in those areas with some marketing work and storytelling and all of that. So those are the skills that I bring to the table, that and a lot of community work in Pittsfield.
So welcome, Marion, and you'll kind of get up to speed quickly, and we'll get to participate in our annual meeting as we've talked about in March. But you'll have a couple of EDC meetings today and March 3rd, I think, to kind of help get ready.
Welcome.
I just want to say, the projector has just died, so you won't be able to see anybody. Zoom is, sorry, and I need to wear my mask now.
You know, I'll just go home and do them.
It might be easier. Is it all right? Just only, especially since you live so close. So, all right.
That way you don't have to.
No, I mean, I feel badly.
No worries, no worries.
All right. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 6th meeting? Patrick,
motion.
is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right. Citizen comments. Sorry, I did that out of order. Are there any citizen comments that don't relate directly to our agenda? And again, if you can raise your hand using the little hand button under reactions. I think maybe I can't see everybody now. I don't see anybody waving their hands. Okay. Moving on, financial update. First, we only get information from the state every 3 months. The next quarterly, we have the next revenue that we'll receive, which will be for the fourth quarter, will be February 15th-ish. So at the next meeting, we will know how we did in the actual fourth quarter of 2022. The trend, as you all remember, is started the year well below 2019, our last normal year, finished the third quarter really 25% ahead of the equivalent quarter in 2019. So it'll be interesting to see whether that trend continued or not. It'll sort of perhaps give us a bit of a baseline for what we might expect in 2022. Oh, hi, Mary. I'm sorry. I'm just giving an update. The projector has gone out.
Okay.
So you'll be able to hear, but
All
you won't be able
well, maybe
to.
I'll go home. You just let somebody on the stairs or
Yeah.
anything.
I convinced her to go home. Marisa, so, all right. All right, so jumping into new business then. The first issue is the 2022 grant process. And in particular, two questions, which really are separate, quite separate. The first is to talk a little bit about the types of grants that we have received, in particular, certain categories of grants that I've highlighted. I know that there's been some discussion among a number of people, both on the EDC and off. And I thought rather than try to, and an example would be giving grants to owners of private buildings for interior renovations. Other discussions like giving loans to people and so forth. So we're not making any decisions tonight. We're not voting to change criteria or to do anything that would affect tonight any applications. What we're really trying to do is to share our thinking and to have more than just the Saturday morning at our annual meeting to consider these issues and to hear what other people have to say. So what I'll do is we'll just sort of take 20 or 25 minutes and just let the discussion flow around a couple of topics that I've teed up and other topics that are similar that you'd like to tee up. And let's just hear how people would argue for or against different types of different types of decisions that we might make in March. And then we'll take it from there. And we could have a follow-on discussion in our March 3rd meeting, our regular meeting, which comes a week and a half before the annual meeting if we feel like we want to continue. All right, is everyone comfortable with that? Everyone understand the kind of the basic premise here? Let me just put up, see whether or not you can see this. Sorry, hold on one second. I'm operating in And again, apologies, Bill, for, you know, that we can't, the projector is now,
Our biggest fear with this, you know.
yeah, it's happened.
Yeah.
So here are some questions that I know a number of people have asked. I'll just read the questions and then I'll open up the floor for people to make comments about what, again, remember that this is not prejudicing any decisions that we will make. This is not a decision-making meeting. We're not voting. We're just sharing thoughts so that people can begin to digest and think these issues through. Here are 4 questions that I thought I've heard and that I think are relevant. Do we feel it's appropriate to give grants to private building owners for interior renovations? Something we haven't done before. We've talked about facade improvement, but not interior renovations. And if I would add to that, if we do, what type or amount of public accommodation would we expect the building owner to return other than staying open and having a nice building? Would they let us use the facility? Would they open it up to the public? Would they offer discounts? What would they do in return for getting public funding? And that was one of the questions we posed in our question sheet to all of those applicants. Second, would it be different if we were to offer a loan to private building owners? Should we be offering loans at all? Does it make a difference if the grant request is for exterior rather than interior renovation? Does it make a difference if the building is located outside the downtown village area? This cycle, I believe it's correct that all of the applicants who applied for these types of grants were located in the village, but that might not be the case in the future. Is it appropriate for us to give money to private business owners to help them grow their existing businesses, not necessarily renovations of a building, but a business owner? And there were a number of grants where people asked us to do that. Is it appropriate to give the winner of an entrepreneurial challenge funds to start a new private business? There's a grant proposal for that. Is that different than an individual business requesting it? And there may be other questions as well that are triggered by the 45 or 50 applications that we have. So let me just open up the floor and get people's reactions to pro or con, whichever side of these issues you feel like you're on. I'll start with Todd. Go ahead.
Well, hello, everybody. And again, Mary, welcome to the commission. We're happy to have you. I'm excited to have another member participate. John, I just want to thank you for all the hard work you always do behind the scenes. We all so much appreciate it. I did email you at 3 a.m. the other day and you did not get back to me until 4 a.m. So I'm a little bit peeved, but thanks for all your hard work. We would be nothing without you and these efforts. Really appreciate it. I've been thinking long and hard about this. It's important to know this is subjective in a way because we don't have a set of rules that we abide by. So there is a vote and we vote, and that's what the rule becomes for that moment in time, for that thing in time. So, as someone I grew up in Connecticut, I was very fortunate. I went to LA, I lived in a closet. I started my own business. And here I am in Woodstock. Okay, that's the short version. So I understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I understand what it's like to be poor and have nothing. I understand what it's like to have to go to a bank, family, friends, anybody. I understand what it's like to fail. I think I really struggle with the idea of us doing 2 things. One is helping a private business grow in terms of that business being a structure or building that is an investment in and of itself, like my building at the Tassville Country Store is. I need a lot of money for it, but I also can make a lot of money if I sell it because the building's worth a lot. A lot of places in the village are like that and other places in Woodstock. I struggle with thinking about the people's money going toward these private ventures, but I can understand where there could be examples or instances where we might feel otherwise. And I think that we just need to really consider the fact that we are a body of voters. That's a body of voters in and of itself. And we decide on certain topics, and one thing may seem close to one and the other maybe seem close to it as well, but they're slightly different. That difference can be the difference between a yay or nay on the plus. So I struggle with it because I want to say to the community, look, we're not helping private businesses. We're only doing this or that. But as it is, and and always say that what is economic development is even hard to describe. It's a nuanced subject and a nuanced answer, and it's changing all the time. So I would love for someone in the commission to convince me why we should, because I can't think of a reason. There are banks out there. There are people who lend money. There are people who give money. There's government, there's state and local. All that's before we get to our local government, where this 1% money becomes available to that public where we see fit, and we hope we put it in the right spot. So to summarize, I'm 100% at this point, but I'd love to hear the counter arguments against lending to private businesses, and I'm 100% against granting the private businesses for any improvements that don't directly affect the experience of the community in an impactful way, which is the subjectivity of it, of course. I end with this, that my family didn't apply for anything of this public money for the Tassville store, but we have spent 10 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week, working with planning and zoning, Mary, the town, the state, feds, to go and bring the best experience possible to Woodstock for that space with the least financial impact to my family. And it's hard. And what I feel is perhaps this might be too easy for folks to get the people of Woodstock's money. And that's what I'm concerned about.
Okay, all right, thank you, Tom. All right, other comments or thoughts about the specific issues Todd raised, or some of any other issues that are on the PowerPoint or reflected in the applications?
John?
Yeah.
I've had the same question that Todd had, is, the question of money for interior work and so forth. And I even questioned some of the exterior work. I don't have as much issue if we treat it as a loan. I think that's helpful. But we discussed before that if we did something in that way, shape, or form, that if there was something that they could give back to the town, whether that's space, whether it's discount for people who are local, some way, shape, or form to benefit the community, other than the people who are visiting us from out of state, out of town, and so forth. So I do struggle at the same time with the loans, particularly for interiors and people who are looking for loans for employees and that type of thing. So I'm less offended. Well, offended is the wrong word. I'm more likely to do that as a loan approach than I am as a grant approach. And this is where I think the EDC developing a grant manager could help people find money. And to me, that would be much more of an economic development process than, here's some money.
All right, Joe, and then Deborah.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm going to be redundant about this, but I really think it all boils down to a more clearly defined EDC mission. I think, and of course we can't deal with that now, and I'm totally aware of that. Perhaps it's an issue that we can kind of tackle in the future, I hope. But it seems to me, in every business that I've started and been involved with, interior renovations and what you want to do to a spot in order to conduct your business is all part of a business plan that I would think somebody who is either wanting to start a business and then, or expand a business. It seems to me that some of the grants, and I don't want to be rude about this, but some of the grants that were applied for, well, why should we use our own money? Let's go to the EDC and see if we can get money from them. Well, that's an attitude I'm not comfortable with. I don't understand why somebody starting a business would start a business thinking in order to start that business, they would get money from the EDC. It should be part of their business plan and what they have to achieve and what needs to be done to get that business going. That's my feeling.
All right, thank you. Deborah and then Laura Powell.
You know, I think it really makes it difficult this year when we know we're about to step into a time where we're really going to button up what we do at the EDC and how we step forward. So I understand why there's the hemming and hawing, because we want to put that together. In the meantime, I think what we need to do is make it as fair as possible. And even though I can understand the logic of, okay, it makes a little bit of a difference if it's downtown, because then it adds to the experience of people coming to town or whatever, but it's the money of everybody from the community. And so I have a hard time saying I'm okay with giving you money, but somebody who's on the outskirts of town, I'm not okay with giving them money. You know, the logic of that, there's trouble with that for me. One of the things that I'd like to see, which we're starting to do with the commission, is provide ways to support people for coming up with a plan. As Joe said, you know, helping people start new businesses, helping them grow their businesses, having the grant manager, having an ability to loan money to the community where it comes back again. These are all ways that I think people can get behind with helping private businesses. I think it makes it much tougher when it's just, I'm going to spend $1 million to get this building, but I'm going to then look for grants for, you know, whatever the piece is to finish. I think that's a much harder thing to do.
Okay, Laura and then Larry.
Hi, sorry, I'm not on the EDC obviously, but I think Deborah had a lot of really good points, and I don't want to be redundant here. I don't know that it's like, as a citizen and as a taxpayer, I don't know that it's super helpful to think about the intent behind the applications, or like the why they're doing this as opposed to not doing something else. I'm very excited to see so many people applying for them because the money is there. And I think that shows how successful the advertising of the application process has been. I think I will say, you know, like I was trying to think of a case in which interior improvements could be impactful to the community. And things like I don't know, like the daycares in town, if they needed capital improvements interiorly, if that was a major need and the community rallied for that cause, like, is that a rule you guys want to make and exclude that down the road? I think focusing, like you guys are talking about, on which applications have the most impact to the citizens is, and I know it's like a very subjective and nebulous thing, but talking about that. And I think the thing about the interior grant applications is that a lot of those applications to me seem like they missed this opportunity to talk about how they would impact the community. So it's more so like, hey, we need this fixed, without any discussion of like how that space would be used by the community or could be used by the community. And I know John spoke to this last meeting. So I guess I'll wrap up and say that I think the evaluation should again be less so about like gatekeeping the intent and more so about the impact. Thanks.
Laura, just to interject for one moment. It is important for us to, thank you for your words. It is important for us to remember the pre-app was a broad spectrum, and the application offers folks to get into some of those details. So while I agree with you, and many of them, I was like, I wish they they didn't have to, but they do have that opportunity. So we'll see if some of those folks, we're probably thinking about some of the same, perhaps, take that opportunity to enhance that vision in the actual application process.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. And I think it's also an opportunity too, for maybe like to adjust the pre-application next year, help people and say like, maybe these people aren't natural salespeople or marketers, but like, hey, listen, like the impact statement's got to be, you know, if you really want to sell this to people from the get-go. And I think that's what John is probably talking about, having someone who's on the grant management side of it, helping these people, you know, effectively communicate these. So thanks, guys.
Larry and then Marion.
Yeah. First, I would say I totally agree with Joe about it's too bad we don't have a more concrete mission statement. But I would also say that the discussions we are having now actually gets us along that route and helps us a lot for the future discussions we're going to have. I guess my major point would be more to reiterate what other people are saying. I just think that I don't see that we need to say we will or won't do interior or exterior or whatever. I think we need to say, in my opinion, that whatever the request is for, it's got to have a broad economic or community interest impact to the community. I don't see how an interior grant proposal could do that, as the woman just said. There may be a situation where that could be. Maybe you provide some sort of service or facility. I don't understand that quite, but I feel like we could be more general in what we're saying rather than not being in interior improvements. It's just got to have a broader impact than the usual impact, which is, if you give me some money, I can expand my business or I can do this improvement, which is just that's anybody, that's any business. So it's got to have something more specific. On loans, I'm not in favor of loans unless we use the exact same criteria for loans as we do with grants. I don't see unless we don't have a subset of conditions for a loan that is different than grants that I know of. And if you start trying to define where you give a loan, but you wouldn't give a grant, I think you get into a very murky area that I wouldn't be comfortable with. So that's what I have to say.
All right, thanks. Marion and then Roger.
So I think a lot of, I would guess, I would take what a lot of people already said one step further, which is I think my gut tells me that the criteria are more about impact than about motivation or even process. So like it probably matters less whether it's interior or exterior and more about the impact. But I have the new guy dumb question, which is one of the struggles we're up against filling downtown storefronts? Is that an issue that Woodstock has? And in which case that might affect the sort of what is the positive impact of the town on these kinds of investments?
That is an important, I think, without getting into a big, reaction to your point, that definitely is a priority. And we have a program, a small program to help address that specifically, which has to do with rent, not renovations. But you're raising a good point. Roger?
Yeah, I have probably a lot of the same reservations that other folks have about granting money to a private business. I think it's less important whether it's interior or exterior than whether or not there's a true public good in that. I am much more sympathetic to the idea of a loan program. I don't know if we're really in a position, I don't know what like a business loan costs right now. But if that's kind of the make or break for somebody to either get started in a business or to grow the business, then I think a loan, an interest-free loan would be a good investment. But with the same criteria that you use for other things, is it business development as opposed to kind of paying the rent or something? Because that seems to me not a place that, except under emergency circumstances like the pandemic, that you want to go. Thanks.
Okay, I'm just going to say we've got 5 more minutes left. So Todd, and then if there's one more comment after that, that'll be fine. But go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I think we're going to segue into the loan thing in just a few moments, but I want everyone to remember that we have, I believe, $30,000 set aside for when this grant process is over for monies for other ideas and other such things. So we do have that to consider during these discussions as we might think about what might be a yay or nay and what balance we might have left at our annual meeting.
Okay, thank you. And Todd, that we can discuss this offline or at the next meeting, but it's that 30,000 is sort of an informal thing, which we absolutely can and perhaps should make formal. So we have quite complete flexibility. So
I thought we voted on it when Jeffrey brought it up at like 5 or 6 meetings ago. We should probably just check the minutes. I thought we voted on it.
Yeah, I thought what we voted on was the fact that with a 2/3 vote of the EDC, we would consider grants other than at the annual meeting, but I didn't think we had, so which is the same in spirit as what you're describing, but it wasn't a fixed amount of money, was my recollection. But in any event, we have flexibility in that regard. We certainly have agreed on that. It looks like Jeff and Ray, and then I'm going to cut it off at Ray, if that's okay. So go ahead, Jeff, and then Ray.
Okay, thanks. Quickly, I'll say I agree with not providing grant money for existing businesses or even new businesses to grow their business or to renovate interiorly. I'm against that. But I do think that it's important to think of some things such as exteriors where the owner of the building is not interested or caring about the looks of the building at all or how it impacts folks in Woodstock. Now, so specifically what used to be the Bentley's building, which is in tremendous disrepair and an exterior sense and an eyesore instead of a beautiful building, which it could be. And I think things such as that should be something the EDC should be concerned with and perhaps consider being a part of a solution. Just want to make that comment because that's an ongoing problem that the owner is not interested in taking care of.
Thanks, Jeff. Ray, last comment.
Yeah, I just think you're going down a slippery slope when you start investing money on the interior buildings for merchants. I just think it's a bad idea. I think, all of a sudden the door's going to open. If we want to upgrade our interior, we just go to the EDC and get that money. I just think it's a bad idea.
Okay, well, this is good. I mean, I'm surprised at the relative, it's not unanimous, but the relative consistency. I mean, it's clearly a very strong common sense about this category of grants, which I think will be useful to know that as we kind of go into our annual meeting. Deborah, I don't want to shut you up, so go ahead, but make it quick.
It's small. It's the complication of what Jeff said, which I understand, but then you have, we are now investing in somebody's property when they're not caring for it, and then they get a huge upside of doing something that they should have been doing to begin with. And so it makes it really complicated, I think. And so when we go down that road about exteriors, I think we need to really think through and talk through what that means when we're putting in investments that these owners are going to then reap the benefits of. Yeah,
I will say that to amplify the point that you're making about complexity, maybe I'll use different words, but I'm making the same point. I've had discussions about this specific issue, and in particular interior and exterior. There is no answer at the end of a long debate. If we took X amount of time to allocate to debate this, there is no clear answer. It's pretty obvious that if you don't give money to renovate Bentleys won't be renovated. It's pretty clear that we don't want to give money to private businesses. Those two are irreconcilable points. And that I'm not saying which is right or wrong. I'm simply saying that what I'm certain of is that they're irreconcilable.
I get that. And yet whatever we come up with, we have to be comfortable with, that's
correct. And therefore what I'm suggesting is that what we be comfortable with are answers that are somewhat ambiguous, because otherwise we won't be able to come up to do anything. Not in every realm, but in this one. And so
I get it. I would love to see it happen.
That's why John and Todd are buying Bentleys and Jeffrey's going to run Unicorn too.
Right, exactly. All right, good. Well, thank you for laying out these issues. Todd, I think we did somewhat touch on the loan issue through this discussion, so I'm not going to sort of extend that. I would like to talk about process for a minute, and in particular scheduling. We have a dwindling number, but very slowly dwindling number of applications. I think we've had 4 applicants withdraw their applications. So it leaves us with 45 or 44, a large number, larger than we've ever had before. Our annual meeting could start as early, I don't know, as 9, let's say. It could go till 2, but if that's the only time we have, I think it's fairly likely, bordering on certain, that people will feel they didn't have enough time to explain themselves. The public will feel that they didn't have enough time to comment. We will force ourselves to have to make decisions. Even if we make good decisions, many people will feel that the process wasn't right. And I really think we need to avoid that. And so I'd like to have a brief discussion about ways in which we can extend the time, perhaps doing it efficiently. I think that there are some basic principles. I think we need to give the public an opportunity to opine, not necessarily at the annual meeting. And we'll have a discussion later tonight about an online discussion forum, which I think can create a very important opportunity for the public to comment as much as they want without taking up the time at the annual meeting, through an online discussion forum that might take place between now and then, and perhaps in particular the week before. I think we need to give people a chance we need to give everyone a chance to present. We, as the EDC, need to be prepared, meaning that we are going to have to read the final applications. And so plan on, and they're going to be longer than the pre-app. So plan on that one block of work. The applications will be available this is the great thing about it, there's no compiling since it's done electronically. So March 1st at 9 a.m., they're available. So prepare between then and the 12th to read them. So I'd like to suggest that we take some days in the evenings, in the days following the annual meeting, to continue to consider those. But I'd like to solicit some ideas for how we might modify that, and Todd and so forth. If you, Larry and Roger, if you have your hands up, leave them up, but otherwise, if you can put them down, I can't tell if it's continuing. And Patrick, would you please continue to monitor hands, because I still can't see everybody. Todd, go ahead.
It goes to what I said before, all the hard work people are doing. And I think the public knows or doesn't know, cares or doesn't care. So we have our time, and Patrick, you mentioned, I fully agree with it. We made a mistake. The mistake we made was we went online with this pre-app, which was a great idea. I was part of that idea, many others, and it was super successful. Our mistake was we were too successful with this thing. And so because we didn't have the time to realize that, hey, this idea would be great and people would really embrace it, our version 2 pre-app, as mentioned earlier, will be better, and we'll have more poignant questions to help us point the way. So where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves with these pre-apps that we won't judge people on, because we said we wouldn't. The application's coming, hopefully for all these folks, and then a lot of time to go through it. I think that what we need to do, it's a hard thing, but I think we need to listen to Mary, who is the goddess of all things government in Woodstock, and she brought up the fact, whatever rules we set, we need to stick by the rules. If it's 2 minutes or 5 minutes, we got to have the clock and turn it off. Now, what do I want to see? I want to see everyone come and fight to get this town folks money. I want them to come and convince us why they should have it. And then I want to have a fair vote. And I know we all do too. Do I want to spend 4 days doing that? No, but I will say, because I was personally involved with the pre-app and feel like it should have been done better on my own accord, I should have put more effort into it. I'm willing to sacrifice that time this year if we all agree that next year the pre-app will become the app, and it'll be tighter, and they'll have more time to do it, perhaps like the pre-app amount of deadline or something to this effect. I wonder what my colleagues think, but this is going to stink. We're going to spend a lot of time because people deserve it. Unfortunately, we made a great solution. We all worked great, and it all worked out, and here we are. We got to give up like 3 or 4 days of our lives.
Larry, thank you, Tom. Larry.
So I agree with Todd, and this is our job. This giving out grants is really the job of the EDC. So I don't in any way want to shortchange anybody who's gone through that effort. My My other question, however, is if we are coming up with some consensus of the type of grants that we're not favorably inclined towards, not with any specific reference to any specific grant request, how can we get that message out? Should we vote on it? Do we get that message out to the applicants? If it kind of looks like things aren't going philosophically anyway in their direction, it seems like we're asking them to go through a whole more sophisticated grant application process with a discussion which suggests fairly strongly that the application may not be favorably reacted to. So I'm just wondering how we're going to get that message out, or if we want to.
Well, if I can just, I have a suggestion on that specific point, and then Deborah, Ray, and Joe. I think we have to be careful. So I think we have to be careful because we have not seen what people are proposing. So for example, is there a public accommodation that would convince me to give money to someone who wanted to renovate the interior of their building? Unequivocally, yes. And I suspect all of you would agree. None of the applicants spoke about the public accommodations that they would provide. We didn't ask them, they didn't offer. We have asked each of them to indicate in every case, the questions we gave back to them is be prepared to tell us what your public accommodation is. So I think we would be foolish actually to tell people that you might, maybe you shouldn't submit your grant. Maybe one of them wants to donate the rent to support workforce housing. That's their public accommodation. They just need some money to fix the sprinkler system. I mean, I'm making that up and it's unlikely, but I think we're sort of stuck with waiting for the applications and then deciding on them. Having said that, I don't see any problem sharing. In fact, I think it would be productive to share the general sentiment of this tonight, which was, I think, absent that, there wasn't any real support given to giving grants for people to make their buildings better so that their buildings could be better. We were expecting more than that. I didn't hear anyone disagree with that. And we want to let people know that for those of you that have grants that are like that about your business or your building, be prepared that, we won't really give much consideration to that unless you can change that story in some way by giving the public some kind of other benefit. That would be, I think that would, if you're comfortable with that. And is anyone on the EDC uncomfortable with that?
No, I think that's fantastic. Okay. It points to Larry's concern. I think it's fantastic.
And it points the way towards what could be a successful application without letting people waste their time. So let's agree to do that. All right. Again, though, we're still I'd just like to stay on the topic just for a few minutes, 5 minutes, till we resolve it, of the schedule of this, to make sure that we can give people, well, to make sure that the process is fair. Deborah, and then Ray, and then Joe.
I understand that this is, quote, our fault in the sense of that we were more successful at getting more people in, et cetera, et cetera. This is all good news. We're working through some things. The fact that there are more people involved in the community in a way that EDC hasn't seen, all of it, it's just plain and simple. There's no bad news here, And so I think we need to frame it that way of, we're working in the best way we can to get the information out to people and to get the information from you of what it is that you need. I also just want to say again, and I forget who said it, I think it was Larry, it's like, this is what we do. So I think we need to be prepared as members of the EDC board that next year, let's hope that there's 70 grants and that it does take a full week. And, too bad. We have to spend the time to do that because this is the whole point. So I feel uncomfortable with the stopwatch being so quick. I really do, because I think you need to give people the opportunity without it droning on, but allow us to have a real conversation with anybody who spent the time to put an application together. And if that means that it's 3 or 4 nights, then that's that's what it takes. And I'm willing to do it. And hopefully the people on the board will agree as well.
Deb, do you have any idea how long I can talk if someone doesn't shut me up? Do you have any idea?
I think
No,
we
I'll have a
do.
stopwatch on you. I didn't say you.
Good, very good, very good.
I think
No,
we
no,
have.
no.
Good
I said
idea.
the applicant. Yeah. No, I'm not saying it's open-ended. I just, the 2 to 5, it just feels, and trying to get it all in at once. I know my brain won't, especially after a day's work, we're not going to be able to do a good job. We need to figure out how to do it in smaller portions. And hopefully next year there are 70 applications. I hope so. I hope so.
Thank you. That's very good. Ray and then Joe. And then Patrick. Patrick, you'll be the last one. I think your hand is still up. So Ray, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned. You're talking about telling some of these applicants that they're not going to make the cut and not in a public meeting. I just think you gotta, anything that goes on from here on is gonna be public, has to be in a public meeting.
Well, no, sorry. Well, absolutely not telling them that they won't make the cut. I said,
Okay.
maybe what I'm telling them is, here's a summary of what we discussed at our public meeting. And by the way, that announcement of it would be public. I would post it on the website. Here's what, yeah. So we'll conform to the open meeting rules. And the substance of the message is not that you're not going to get it. It's as we've been doing, it's pointing towards the importance of those questions, particularly around public accommodation for people who are asking for money for their private businesses and so forth.
And Ray, this goes towards Jill's point from a few weeks ago, where she had the insight to say, hey, if I was doing an application for XYZ and XYZ really isn't something you consider, even though I can still submit my application, it'd be great if I knew that, because I love the opportunity to say, well, I'm not going to waste my time on it then. And sort of, we were like, oh, that's really interesting. But this all sort of came from that, trying to just guide the public into knowing what our thoughts are, but we're not certainly dissuading anyone from submitting their application. Certainly all applications will be reviewed.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Just
Sam, for those of you that
I was clear on that, for my own benefit.
all right, thank
All
you.
right.
No, and it's worth highlighting. Thank you. And Sam Di Natale, and if you're following along in the chat, has just made a comment, I think, supporting this basic point about that you just made, Tut. All right, Joe, and then Patrick.
I think we all realize and can accept that this is a relatively new process for us, particularly with the pre-app component, which I think is great. And so it's going to be a learning thing. I mean, I read somewhere where the only things that mankind got right the first time they tried it was sex and beer. And so, I would say, listen, we're just going to have to dig in, grit our teeth, go with what we've started and learn from it. And if it takes more than one meeting to do this in a justifiable way, then so be it. We have to do that. I think we have to consider the integrity of the EDC, and that is part of the process. And if it's going to take us more than one meeting, that's the way it's going to be. And we'll learn from it. And next year, hopefully, what we've learned, we can apply and make it a better process. But I think we have to handle what we have right now as it is.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Joe. Patrick, last comment.
Yeah, to reiterate that, I've been one saying from the get-go, we got to give everybody a chance to have their public time. And, if we need to schedule, I mean, I think if we say, hey, we're going to give everybody 10 minutes or whatever the time frame is, then we just schedule people in blocks of time and do it over multiple days. Anyone can attend, but I think we need to give everybody their voice. If they've taken the time to do the pre-app and then do the application, and if they have any questions or want a better understand what they may need to improve upon, ask us.
Yeah, terrific. And we have put out that request, that opportunity to ask us more than once. So we've done exactly that. Well, this is great. I think that I'm energized by everyone's commitment, or everyone who's spoken, commitment to to this, to the situation that we're in and the path forward. I think it's terrific. And I think I'm fully in support of it. I will work logistically on the scheduling of that. We have a meeting on March 3rd where we can finalize that scheduling or announce it. I do think we have to tell people what the days might be. Please save Saturday, March 12th. It will be one long day. Let's assume it's something like from 9 to 2 with a half-hour break, a 45-minute break for lunch, or maybe we work through lunch. So we can get a lot done on Saturday, but we'll use the evenings in the week that follows, because there's a select board meeting. These grants don't have to be done within X number of days after our meeting. But the select board does need to review and approve our recommendations. And so I think we want to finish up within a 1 week, within a 1 week period. So I'll work on the logistics of that, but we will have an option to finalize and publicize those dates at our next meeting on March 3rd. Okay.
And John, I think we also should assume moving forward that this will probably be the case each year.
Well, I think we've all said, I think we are setting ourselves up, which is great, for using the 6 or 8 or 9 months. Well, first of all, next year it's going to be earlier. We're going to have the annual meeting in the first or second week in January next year. So we've got 8 months or so, but I think everyone is talking about that as a time when we can reflect on how this process went. We can make changes and so forth, which I have to say, frankly, is a much more proactive, energized approach towards this process. Not just what we're doing now, but the fact that we want to change it again for next year and make it and improve upon it again, I think is terrific. So, okay, let's just move on in the interest of time. It's 7 minutes to 7. The next item on the agenda, we're sort of going to jump around between the grant process. I'll just stay in the order in which we've done it. Which is an update from the housing working group. And I guess have I stopped sharing my screen? I have. So Jill Davies is the chair of the working group, and Jill is going to just give a quick update on the work that they're doing.
Okay, thank you. So this is an update from one of the working groups that was formed at your request. So we're an EDC working group when you decided there were several priorities, and housing was one of the main priorities. The group is made up of a couple of EDC members. Deborah Green has just joined us. John Spector is on the team. There's several other town volunteers from the town and several other people who work for the town are on it. So we have Neil Leitner and David Green has contributed, Sally Miller, Sarah Stadler, and Greg Olmsted are on the team, and Devin Kurtz and Eric Benvenuto have been on the team at various stages. So we just have a couple of slides so that you know what we've been doing. We first met 10 months ago, and we've been meeting pretty regularly since then. And our objective is to increase the number of housing units in Woodstock. So we started off with that broad objective. The things we've been doing are assessing the housing situation, researching what programs are working elsewhere. I'm sure you know if you read the newspaper that this is an issue throughout the whole country and all sorts of people are doing all sorts of programs. So we've never felt the need to reinvent the wheel, but we always want to copy. We've determined what the low-hanging fruit for Woodstock is, and I'm going to talk to you more about that. We've been collecting some public feedback. We've had a survey, we've done some interviews, we've done one public work session on ADUs, and we have more to come. And then we're very clear what our next steps are, which is more of these public work sessions. We're working on 3 grant applications to bring to you. And really importantly, there is going to be a zoning bylaw review. 2 Rivers are doing this. It's a grant funded process, and it will really help us to streamline the ADU process. So one of the things we've done is we all want to provide more housing units, and we've been defining what the right price is for the local workforce. And I've got a couple of charts just to show you what we're thinking here. So the rule of thumb is that reasonable housing costs should be no more than 30% of gross income. And when we talk housing costs, in that 30%, you're talking rent plus utilities, or mortgage, property tax, insurance, and utilities. So the total cost for your home. So it really seems that a reasonable rent for somebody being paid by local companies and organizations is $1,000 to $1,500 a month or less. And a reasonable price for a home buyer is $250,000 to $400,000 with a 20% down payment. And I'll show you a few more charts about that. So we're looking at the housing costs and looking at this 30%. So in this chart, you've got housing costs going across the bottom and you've got hourly wages going down the side. And that blue line is where the 30% income comes into play. So if you are earning, let's say $20 an hour, then your monthly housing cost, if it was to be 30%, is something like $1,000 a month. And I've put on the chart what people in this area earn. So below that $20 an hour as a retail assistant, a receptionist, or a server without tips. Below the $30 an hour is a teacher, and then many town employees like the fire and police. So you can see how that $1,000 and $1,500 are starting to play there. And obviously, if you have a dual income household, then these numbers can be higher. But we'll talk more about $1,000 and $1,500, and this is where they come from. We do have in town some rental units that have lower rents than these. Safford Commons is a state subsidized project with rents that depend on income. So if your income is lower, if it's lower than the median income of the area, then you are eligible for a lower rent here. So rents could be as low as $660 for a one-bedroom unit if your household earnings are closer to the 30,000 range.
I think I just want to make clear though that this chart is in here for comparison purposes. The EDC, or the working group, I should say, because we're not empowered to make any decisions, but the working group is focused on what I would say is on the chart before, not on this. This is just an example of something else that's available. This is what we're focused. This is what the working group is trying to do, $1,000 to $1,500 a month, not a federally subsidized housing program. We can debate that, but that's what the working group's point of view is.
Okay. And then we've also looked at how these numbers translate to home ownership. So there's a chart here where the blue is the monthly mortgage cost that you'd have if you only were able to put a 3% down payment to a property. And the red is the income that you'd have to have if you were going to put down a 20% down payment. And the down payment increases, the larger the down payment, then the more house you can afford. So if you have a look at that $250,000 house, then if you have a down payment of 20%, a household with an income of 61,000 might be able to afford that each month. If you had an income of 80,000 and you had a 20% down payment, you could afford costs that would buy you a $350,000 home. If you didn't have that 20% down payment, then you'd be looking at the $250,000 house. So down payments within the home ownership scheme of things are really important. So as a group, we're working on low-hanging fruit first. We're actually not looking at any home ownership opportunities. And so we see 3 opportunities to work on: home share, incentives to convert short-term rentals to long-term rentals, and then to make it easier to create ADUs. And we see those opportunities for building homes, whether that be individual homes or larger developments inside or outside the village, as things that are more complex that we need to tackle later. We say they're more complex because there's more capital involved, there's a more challenging regulatory environment. And so we've gone for these 3 that are in orange here, and I'll talk about them a bit more. So the Thompson Center is leading the area's home share effort, and the EDC is the supporters. The EDC has provided grants in the past. And what home share is somebody saying, I have a room in my house and I can give that to somebody who's looking for a home. But I really want that person to provide some companionship, maybe some help around the house. And it's also that opportunity to offset housing expenses. In this effort, there's a lot of work done conducting background checks and reference checks and matching the person who's offering the space and the person who's looking for the space. But it's a really successful model. It's in operation in northern Vermont, and last year in that Burlington area, 96 homes were shared. So 180 people were helped with this model. So we're supporting that. Another model that we're interested in copying is a successful initiative that worked in Big Sky, Montana, a ski resort that faces exactly the same issues as we do, but perhaps even worse. They converted short-term rental units into long-term rental homes for local workers. And they did that by giving a cash incentive to the owners of the homes. That incentive depended on the size of the unit and the length of the lease. So they were talking about something like $5,400 for a 1-bedroom 1-year lease and $11,800 for a 1-bedroom 2-year lease. They've had the program going for about 5 months, and in that time have converted 23 units. So that's going to be one of the grant applications that you see so that we could experiment with this. And then I'm sure you've all heard about ADUs. There was even a conference this week put on by the White House. Everybody seems to want to get in on creating ADUs to bring more housing units to the market. And one of the reasons that they're so popular is that they're called the invisible infill. They don't have to look like a whole load of new homes. And they can be an addition to the existing house. They can be part of the existing house. So you could do internal changes to divide. They could be a new or existing separate building. They could be that unit above the garage. And so we've spent quite a lot of time looking at what it takes to create an ADU, and it's really complicated. So we divided it into 7 steps. There's all the upfront work, the exploring and the feasibility. And then when you know what you want to do, there's the designing, the financing, getting all the permits, and then getting into the construction, and then learning to become a landlord and actually operating this unit. There are many examples of how different towns are helping to make it easier for homeowners to create these ADUs. And some of them are Vermont examples, some of them are from further afield. So in the exploring and the feasibility stage, there are examples of people providing technical assistance to both make sure that the homeowner asks the relevant questions and so that they start getting some answers. And there's an example in the Mad River Valley of the Mad River Valley Housing group that has a person that does this. Then there's the design stage. Once you go forward, there are towns that are providing pre-approved designs. The financing stage is complex. ADUs are not something that banks are very familiar with, and many of their financing models don't work for ADUs. There are towns that are helping with that process and providing 0 or low % interest loans if the unit is rented long-term for an agreed rent level. And then the permitting process. The permitting process is quite complex. Basically, it seems like you need permits for everything you would need if you were going to build $1 million home. But the ADU is going to cost you more like $100,000 or $200,000. So you're asking somebody to do something for a low cost and spend all the effort that it would cost to build, that it would take to build $1 million home. So you're asking a homeowner to become a developer. And that's why so many towns are offering somebody to handhold through this whole process and make it easier for people so that they're not having to pay professionals at all these stages. Then there's the construction stage. And what some people have done is develop a list of qualified contractors and have worked with them so that there are contractors who are interested in building these smaller units that are less dollars, and they know how to proceed through the steps. There are modular companies who are building some of the backyard ADUs who are trying to streamline the process for everybody. And then there's the last step where you ask the homeowner to become a landlord. And there are different people offering help in many different ways by either giving advice or going as far as matching tenants or taking tenants from local employers so that there's some sort of security there. Brattleboro even provides a property manager hotline so that people can really help with this. The other point that it's worth making here is that there are considerable costs that a homeowner would get into even before they got to the stage of mortgage financing. So these stages, the exploring, the feasibility, the designing, the permitting, and even the financing itself, there are costs involved. So there may be opportunities here where you want to actually provide grants for these upfront spaces. So we did a work session with people who were interested in creating ADUs, and there were 3 areas of immediate interest for support. The initial stages of exploring and feasibility were an area where people asked for help because they just didn't know where to start. And then the next stage was permitting, where people were the permitting stage is really quite forbidding. And so if we could offer any help there, that would be helpful. So you're going to see 2 grant applications from us to try to offer help in these areas where we're going to try and make it easier for people to get through the steps and maybe provide some grant money to pay for these upfront pieces. So this is what we're going to be doing as our next steps, so we can keep helping to increase the number of housing units in Woodstock. We want to hold more public sessions to gauge public interest in creating these ADUs and us providing assistance. We're creating those 3 grant applications that we spoke about. And then simultaneously, there'll be 2 rivers looking at a zoning bylaw review to update those bylaws to make it permitting ADUs much easier. One of those things that you might have read about in the press is many towns have moved to make just 1 parking space the norm rather than 2 parking places, which is what we have. Those are the kind of bylaws that 2 Rivers are going to be looking at and then recommending some changes for us. So that's our presentation. Do you have any questions?
Patrick, then Todd and Laura.
Jill, I got 2 questions for you. What kind of information have you found out in terms of if I take a home and I want to add an apartment in a sense, whether it's above a garage or attached to the house, now taking a 1-family and turning it into, in a sense, kind of a 2-family. Is that the big issue from a financing standpoint? Or do they look upon that house now as less valued than if it was a single-family home?
No, you're likely to be increasing the value of it because you're going to, so we've been working with the listers to try to find out how they value things, and you're going to be valuing it from a sales perspective. So it depends whether you're increasing the sales value of the property or decreasing it by doing something really horrible. Okay, and then my second question is, do we need to deal with septic issues or Act 250 given septic issues? That to me seems could be a big negative if somebody wanted to add. So there has been recent legislation in Vermont that if you have sufficient septic wastewater capacity in your property for the ADU, then you can go through the permitting process a little bit easier. But certainly the septic has to be looked at, and it is one of the potential bigger costs to be tackled in the beginning because you have to get a permit. So you have to get a professional in to do your drawings, and you don't want to be borrowing your money from the bank right then. So that might be something that the grant would cover.
Joe, can you take the presentation down so we can see during the discussion? I don't think we need the last page. Todd and then Laura, and then, yeah, we'll. Go ahead, Todd.
All right, thanks. It's going to be a bit of a spiel. But first of all, I don't want to sound annoying, but Jill, that presentation was amazing. Thank you. And if John learned how to do PowerPoints like that, we'd probably get these meetings. Look, the problem, I got a lot of problems with town. Okay. This is like, I keep telling people, this is xenophobic issues. I talked with John about it. Other people, like there's Woodstock isn't a tiny town. Woodstock is New York City in the middle of Vermont. And there's people here with a lot of money. There's people with no money and everything in between. So where does that come to with housing? Let's make it easy. Let's just take me. I'm a Rockefeller. I got all the money in the world. I don't want to blow it. I want to make something, 1%, 3%, 5%, even though in the market I'm making 10, 11%. I put in Bitcoin, I made 300%. Let me go to what Patrick spoke about. And again, I appreciate what's happening here. I want to find a solution. I want to talk reality though. Let's go to the septic. We just saw in town a big thing about who's going to pay for the septic or the plumbing for town, whatever you call it, the wastewater treatment, all that stuff. Everyone got crazy. All right. I got a big house and a lot of land. I paid for it, paid a lot of taxes, 60,000, I think, when I bought my house just for the transfer. I'm not rolling in the dough, but I'm here long-term. I want to help. My house happens to have a septic system that was built for a hotel. There's one drawing tank that could be filled, but then it goes to another because the people who built this house thought maybe one day it would be an inn. So when the people came to dump the septic, which you have to do and pay for every 2 years, typically, they were like, you never need to dump it. It's like ridiculous. I'm like, okay, the leach field's huge. Great. We have a barn. It's 100 yards from the house. I said, look, let's make that barn someplace someone can live. Okay. Well, the barn needs insulation, needs this, and needs that, all these things. It needs to be a structurally sound building. We're going to put in a septic. Why? Because you can't go to the house septic. It's not zoned for it, this and that. So we called in all the people. It's $40,000 for us to build the septic for the barn if 5 people want to live in it and take a shower and poop. So I'm spending 60,000 instead. So 20 people can poop and shower, because one day I hope we can have laws where I can put some kind of structure on the 60 acres I'm not using, that the people in those 60 acres can have a place where shit flows downhill, pardon my language, and enter that septic and enter that leach. And I'm one and done, and I can give back to this community when I have the ability to do so monetarily. So the issue I have as a 60-acre landowner, just 2 minutes outside the village, is that I don't understand how we can afford to do what you're asking. And I know that you're not the enemy. I know you're the friend, but we need to find out how to take someone like me with 60 acres, with horse trails and people walking and doing all these things. And we got to have a place for people to poop. We got a place for them to pee. Then we got to have pipes that run in that place. Then we have the structure. The structure has to be okay for ADA people. Of course it has to. It has to have a road. I've been in big fights with the town about my farm roads. So what we got to think about, and I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong, but what we got to think about is how for the bigger landowners, and I believe a 60-acre landowner like myself might be on the smaller side. My neighbor has 500. My other neighbor has 200, Blake Hill they own. How do we get some nice, for lack of a better word, tiny homes, some nice dignified spaces where people can poop and pee, they can have a driveway, they can get there in the winter, and they can contribute to society and our local economy, but also have a sense of dignity. And I feel like what I see here, and again, like the work you do is so good, it's 10 times better than I can ever do, and I really mean that. And it makes me almost want to cry, because this problem is so hard. It's so hard. But if you could tell me how to put 30 houses on every acre of the north side of my property and have it not bankrupt my family, and in 20 years I could maybe break even and leave something to my children that's a break-even business, I do it all day long. But that's not the case. People need to poop and pee, and pooping and peeing costs more than the economics of the plan you're submitting.
So one really important point, Todd, is we're starting with the low hanging fruit. What you're talking about is not low hanging fruit. That's why we want to do incentives for people who already have properties, but are going in the short-term rental markets and make them long-term rentals. Those are things that we can do with spending a small amount of money, giving the incentive, and it can happen immediately. So we're just trying to be realistic here. We want to do the home share stuff. That's people sharing rooms in homes that already exist. And then this ADU thing, I think it's complex on your property. Let's go for the ones where it's not too complex. Let's go for some of the bigger houses in town that can be divided up. Let's do things where people can see a route through first and just go for the low hanging fruit first, and then we'll learn. Everything's an experiment, and what the grant applications are asking for is money to help start the experiment, and then we'll quickly learn and improve.
Yeah, and let me
I think I just to interject, I'm with you. I want this to work, but I'm saying that it's the me's that have 60 acres. It's the me's that have 500 acres that have the land to contribute to solving this problem. There are only so many houses on the sewer system that can tap in and make something a wall. That's the problem I have fundamentally with it.
Yeah, I think that it's the tyranny of the or, whatever. I don't think that chart that Jill put up that showed there are 6 initiatives and we're working on 3 of them doesn't mean that we're not going to work on the other 3. We're just starting with these 3, and we can. So this housing working group, whether it's this group of people or they'll get tired and it'll be the next group, is going to be working for the next 5 years until they replace the EDC, and the next group will come in and they'll be working on it for the next 5 and 10 years. The housing is going to be a 15-year solution. This is something that over the next year or 2, we think we can have a small impact and get momentum on housing. I'm just saying what Jill was saying, but I'm using slightly.
And
So we're going to work. We're going to work on this issue.
I hope we do, because all I want to do is see success in this area. And honestly, if I had 20 hours a week free, and Jill, I could help you with it, you call me. I will do anything I can. It's just a black hole to me. It just seems so insurmountable, which is what you're doing.
The thing about black holes, Todd, is you grasp the little thing that you can pull out of the black hole, and we're doing 3. That's why we're suggesting the 3, and we're not tackling the biggest issues yet. We're going for the small ones that can make an impact next year.
Yeah. All right, I'm just gonna.
It's just John. I just want to say that, Jill, that's why you have a lot more experience than me, and I appreciate what you're doing. I think.
All right, I'm just going to, Laura and Sam, I'm going to give the last 2 comments on this, because we're going to have many, many discussions about housing and economic development in Woodstock. So Sam, I'm sorry, Laura, and then Sam, and then we'll move on.
Jill kind of answered my question, but I wanted to reiterate that presentation was amazing. And I know the housing working group just really researches thoroughly. I'm also interested, I know this section was kind of a lot about the accessory dwelling units. But I would definitely be interested to learn more about the incentive program for short-term rentals to long-term, as someone who just bought a house in Woodstock and was edged out of every other property so that someone could have a 4th property here. And those are now being listed as short-term rentals. I'm really motivated to find a solution, because I don't think there's a shortage of housing. I think there's a shortage of reasonable and affordable housing for people here. And I'm even tempted, and I know I'll ruffle feathers, to say, is there a way to decentivize that kind of home ownership? I think that's a state issue that maybe can be solved, but
Laura, that's a problem. That's a problem that's been a long time, and I've been fighting it. That's problem for 2 years to try to get them even to recognize that.
And we're not going to go. And we're not going to go into that tonight.
Totally. But I'd love to. I was thinking the other day about this, and maybe there's a way again for the EDC to help be a vehicle here for people. Maybe for folks.
No, hold on. Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Folks who have properties that may be violating Woodstock's Airbnb or short-term ordinance, to help them put them in the funnel to this program and say hey, we know you're trying to do something here. We can help you, give you another solution, and give you a financial incentive for this. So anyway, again, Jill, amazing work. I know you guys are working hard to solve this problem, and I think it's so nuanced and has so many sides. And like Patrick said, it's been around for a while, but I'm definitely curious to help to figure out how we can incentivize those short-term to long-term rentals. So
Yep.
thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I
You know,
wasn't-
maybe part of that, John, too, is to incentivize is police.
Yeah.
There's no policing mechanism.
Patrick,
but-
there's never enough money.
guys,
There's
let me
not
just-
enough money to do it. There's
Let's-
not
Let's
enough.
not take this
not-
discussion in
yeah,
this
No, I know. It's
direction,
my,
because
it's
this is
sorry,
a
it's my soapbox
responsibility
issue.
of
I'll
the-
shut up.
This is a responsibility of the select board. We're working right now as the housing working group, and we're going as far as our responsibilities let us
Right,
go.
exactly. So, all right. And by the way, I was not trying to cut I pushed the wrong button. I was trying to close the chat window and I inadvertently turned off the recording for 1 second. I would not try to hide it.
Sure.
Guys,
Sam, you get the last word on this, and then we're going to move on. We've only got 35 minutes left. Sam, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't have a comment. I was just clapping in agreement
Oh,
reaction. But if I have to speak, I just will reiterate what a lot of people are saying is how unbelievably important this is as someone who has over 20 employees and how many of them can't find housing. I had one of my most valued employees she spent 13 months trying to find an apartment. And if she didn't have someplace she could have stayed during that time, I would not have had her being able to work for me. And so this is really important work, and I'm really glad it's being done. And thank you
Yeah.
so much.
yeah.
all right. Thank you. And Jill, yeah, thanks, Jill. That's great.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
So
you.
the working group will continue to, to continue to keep us updated. And Jill, this is maybe not a bad way to recruit members to help out on things of people that are indicating
Right.
their passion for the subject. So,
Great.
all right. Thank you, Jill. All right, I'm just going to go back to the agenda. I think we can, I'd like to leave till the end, the last 15 minutes, a discussion of the pre-planning for the summer and foliage village crush. I'd like to start that discussion. Maybe we can get to it even sooner. Just quickly, there are two other process things around the 2022 grant process. The first one is a discussion of whether or not we will consider final applications from people who did not submit pre-applications. There are a couple of people who have asked. I have purposely not remembered exactly who asked because I think this is a matter of principle, not a matter of, well, if it's a really good grant, we'll let them, but otherwise we won't. That really isn't a fair way to do it in my view. So there are a couple of people who have asked. There's not more than a couple. How does anyone, we have made a statement that we wouldn't allow them, but we are fully, it's our process. Does anyone want to advocate for allowing proposals to be considered to submit a final application? Or any other comments? So Patrick had your hand up first. Patrick and then Todd.
This is one of those things, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, John. Either we have a deadline or we don't. And I think we need to have a deadline. Now, it doesn't mean we do have this other money. It doesn't mean that we can't say, hey, 6 months from now, anybody who didn't get a chance, if we have money available, that we can do that. But, I don't think it's fair to the people who made their, got their stuff done on time to now let somebody sneak in after the fact. I know that would annoy me if I was one of those people,
Okay.
because they're competing for the same money that the other people are competing for.
Todd?
You posted on the listserv numerous times, more time. I'm so annoyed by your posts. They're all day long. You break the rules, John. You post every day. We went to the Vermont Standard. We had it online. We had it in town hall. Folks need to follow the directions. If they don't follow the directions, they don't deserve to be part of that process. But because we're a community, and Jeffrey pointed out we should have stuff after the fact, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. And we all said, yeah, we don't know what that money is. We got to figure that out. They should come then and present then, because there's an opportunity for those folks who didn't meet the deadline to still have their voices heard. I think we should stick by that. And I think we need to have rules and adhere to them.
Okay, Deborah, last comment. Go ahead, Deborah.
I might have missed something about that. Did we put out something saying if you missed it, you can come?
No. Prior to your joining, about
Uh-huh.
two years ago, when we went to the annual meeting, just so that everyone's informed, has the same information. When we went to the annual meeting process, we said, and we have since confirmed, that we would consider grants not at the annual meeting, at another time during the year, but with a higher bar. So for us to recommend a grant to the EDC, we need a majority vote. What we agreed at that time was that for us to recommend a grant to the select board not at an annual meeting would require a 2/3 vote. Jeffrey reminded us of that a few months ago, 4 months ago, and we all verbally agreed that yes, we would maintain that policy. So I consider that policy to still be in effect. That's what Todd's referring to.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Especially because we're in this moment of getting super clear and hopefully making some headway in the community. The more we stick to our word, the better it's going to be. So we already talked about having money aside. So I mean, I'm in agreement, I think, with what everybody else is saying, which is great, come along at another time. But I think at this moment, it's not the time for that rule to come into effect. It's, we have this deadline. We were going through this group of applications, come to us at a different point in time in the year. But I think our consistency is going to be our friend.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. Larry, last comment, then we'll move.
Well, I think we have been very clear on this. I just would point out that unfortunately, the article in the Vermont Standard said right at the end that we're still accepting grant proposals. I recall that and looked at it and said, no, we're not supposed to be doing that. I just throw that out there.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that does anyone, given the point that Larry made, does anyone want to change what seems to be a
Well, I would say the Vermont Standard is a paper record for the town. If they did something stupid like that, then we should look into it. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe Larry misread, but if you didn't misread it, I might have to reconsider because that's the paper record.
Well, wouldn't it be, I would say that the approach that Deborah and someone before her, I think both said, Patrick, was we will consider your grant. We just won't consider it on Saturday, March 12th. And so, when we're not talking about doing it a decade later, it's sometime in the year. So can I put my thumb on the scale and suggest that is enough of a, that's enough of an accommodation. It's a pretty significant accommodation. It basically says, that you can get funding even though you didn't go through the annual meeting process.
Well, you know what? I'd like to put a motion then out that reaffirms the EDC's commitment to reviewing other applicants after our annual meeting with a 2/3 majority of the yay to give such grants. Does anyone want to adhere to that motion?
Does anyone? All right, we have motions been made. Does anyone want to second that motion? Joe, there'll be time for discussion in 1 second. Is there a second to that motion?
Second it.
Joe will second it. All right, a discussion. I'd like to, if we can, do this quickly. Joe, was your hand raised on this point or?
Yes, it is.
All right, so a motion's been made and seconded. Joe, comment and then.
John, I think your suggestion is a good one. I would completely support it. Simple as that.
Okay, it wasn't it was Patrick and Jeff. Yeah, good. Right.
I do want to say something about the Vermont Standard. It comes down to kind of what we've been living through. It's like, just because it's said in a paper, all of a sudden people started hearing to it. It's like, if the paper did something that isn't what we do, we need to come back and correct them and say like, hey guys, can we get on the same page?
Yeah. Who runs the EDC, right? Is it the Standard or is it the EDC?
Well, just to be clear, since that article appeared, I have in every single communication, and it's partly because of this, in every single communication that we've sent out, including, I think, the agenda for tonight's meeting, the deadlines, well, sorry, the pre-app deadlines were communicated a dozen times outside of the standard. So in any event, there's a motion been made and seconded. I think we can take a vote now. All in favor of that motion, which is to formalize that, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, good. All right, so we've formalized that point. I think we're in a good place. All right, we've got 30 minutes left, and we have a couple of, we have 2 topics that are left. The first is back to the grant process. And it's how do we allow for public input? Now, in principle, we've all said we're committed to spend the time. It could extend to 3 or 4 nights. We could imagine that there will be public input during that process that might, if we do the math, it might afford time not just for people to present their own applications, but for the public to comment. On the other hand, it might not afford enough time unless we did 12 nights or 14 nights. And I think there's obviously a limit. I mean, there is for me anyway. And there's no reason not to let the public provide input online. And I think that there are many reasons to let them do that. And in fact, we all agreed at the last meeting that we would do that. What we said we would discuss tonight is whether or not the process for doing that would be moderated or unmoderated. Let me set aside all other issues about the discussion forum. The technology exists. A discussion forum on the grant process is actually currently up and running on the EDC website. It's just not accessible by the public, but a few of us have access to it. We can push a switch and it will instantly be online. So we don't have any logistical issues. The question is, do we put it online with or without moderation? That's one point. A second point, which Deborah raised in some private discussions in between, or maybe it was in the email that we were talking about scheduling, is a suggestion that we not start the public input until the final applications are available, because people don't have the applications to review. They only have the pre-application. So what that would suggest is that and those applications will be available midnight on February 28th. So what I'm imagining is a 1-week period between February 28th and March 7th, which we promote publicly during the month of February. We tell people this is how we're doing it. The applications will be ready. They're online. We'll have a discussion forum. We'll either say it's moderated or unmoderated, but it's available, and you've got a week to get in your comments. We're not saying that there won't be any opportunity for people to speak at the meeting, but there may not be. It's more important for the applicants to have time to speak and for the EDC to ask questions. So you cannot count on making your comments heard during that time. If you want to be guaranteed that your comments will be visible to the EDC and to the public, please contribute to this online forum. You have 1 week to do it starting on March 1st, and we'll promote that throughout the month of February so everyone will know about it. So unless there's a disagreement about that, then I think we just need to have a discussion about whether or not it should be moderated or not. We have a volunteer who has agreed to moderate it. I think there was some discussion that it shouldn't be a member of the EDC. I agree with that. So Roger Logan, who's the Roger on my screen here, has agreed to try this out for 1 week. I think this is a really good experiment for the town. The listserv is unmoderated, as David Brown keeps reminding us. I think this is a good opportunity for the town to see what a moderated forum would be like. So I'd be in favor of moderated, but I'd also be okay with unmoderated I think it's important that we have a forum. Roger has developed a set of sensible criteria. Roger, if you want to just take 2 minutes and just briefly summarize what they are. I don't know that we're going to have time to. Anyway, Roger, why don't you just briefly summarize them and let's get feedback and see if there's a general consensus or not about this issue.
Okay. So can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, great. I've been having problems with my computer. So I have a strong opinion that whoever does it, that any kind of forum of this nature should be moderated. And John provided information from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And I believe that this would fall under the category of a limited public forum.
In other words,
And
it's
what that,
legal. We're allowed to do it if we
right,
decide to.
exactly. And that what that means is that it is not it's not like the listserv. It's not where anybody can come on and talk about anything, but this is a topical forum. It's about the specific proposals and that have been put forward to the EDC, and about an open forum for people to discuss that. So the first kind of general principle is that people will be required to be on topic. The second, and I mean, that's really the most important one. So, I mean, I wrote up a whole bunch of general terms and conditions that take up about a page. That's kind of legalese to some extent. It's what you kind of have to do. But basically, it boils down to 4 simple principles: stay on topic, be civil and constructive, address the content and the opinions posted, not the person doing the posting, and don't be a jerk. You know, and I think that all of the, you know, the 25 or 30 terms and conditions that we've in this draft pretty much boil down to that. And then the role of the moderator would be to look at that and not by any stretch of the imagination to censor any kind of content that is about the process, about the proposals that are in place, and or general topic about the EDC, which I would advocate that if people have general questions about the EDC or general comments about the EDC, that should be one of the topics. So the role of the moderator would be to look at that, and then based on, if somebody goes off topic, then I think, you know, basically what I would suggest is that we contact that person. And it's important to note that to use this forum, you have to sign up as a user, and you have to have a confirmed email address. That if somebody goes off topic or some kind of other like relatively minor infraction, that you ask them to edit their post. I don't think the moderator should ever be in a position of editing somebody's post. So if somebody puts it under the wrong topic or whatever you say, or puts 12 topics into one post, I think you go and you ask them to either break it up or change the topic or whatever else. In the more serious kind of violation of the terms, which I frankly don't think will happen, but where somebody is either using abusive language or is being personally abusive, then in that case, you delete the post. You tell the person why you deleted the post. And you tell them that if they continue to make posts that are violating not the kind of topical rules, but are violating the misuse of the post, that they're going to have their user account deactivated. So that kind of in a nutshell is what it would be. And, you know, Deborah is going to be developing some more language for the kind of intro that's a little bit more welcoming and explaining how the whole thing works. But essentially that's what it boils down to.
All right, I think that, let me just, I want to solicit comments. Todd, you can be first. I see you have your hand raised, but I want to say that I think that this is important enough that we need to make the draft guidelines public, which I think we can do in the next couple of days. We need to give both EDC members and the public a chance to look at them and consider them, and we can publicize that. And that probably means that either at our March 3rd meeting, which might be 3 days into the forum, which case the first 3 days would be unmoderated, or on February 27th in a 20-minute special meeting to approve or not the guidelines, we would then make a decision. So we won't simply go forward with this process without the EDC and the public having a chance to see what the moderation proposal is. If we were to go ahead with a moderated forum, so in other words, we're not deciding tonight whether to go ahead with a moderated forum. We're either deciding not to consider it because everyone thinks it's a bad idea, or a majority feel like it's a good idea to explore, we'll explore it and then approve it publicly in one of the ways that I described. All right, so briefly, just quickly, I'm only going to call on the 4 people who have their hands raised now. Todd, then Larry, Deborah, and Patrick. Try to be as concise as you can because we have one more topic. Todd.
I'm going to try, but I feel so strongly about this that I may consider resignation if it doesn't go this way. The government can't moderate. The states can't moderate. The towns can't moderate. I've been kicked off the listserv twice and been like, why? And I hear back from Dave, who I like. He's like, well, you didn't write this and some blame of that. Our job is to spend the people's money as an investment into the people's business. Roger, everything you said was amazing. Yes. And again, unfortunately, I feel like I'm a yes man today because I love what Jill said. I love what you said, but it's all good stuff. Let people assign to the group with a verified email and a name. Let's have rules that they need to be from Woodstock, living in Woodstock, or whatever this might be. And let them speak and be on the public record. If they're a-holes, they're a-holes. Let's just have it be out there. Let them speak, just like the listserv. Unfortunately, the listserv is super anonymous. Let's not do that. Let's have something be accountable as best we can. But I'll tell you this. It's not Roger's job to moderate for the town of Woodstock's Economic Development Commission discussions on the grants. It's not John's job. It's not my job. And it shouldn't be anyone's job. People should be able to speak freely. They should be judged at their own accord. And the town should be able to see what kind of person they are and how they speak to others and how they value others' opinions and how they do true discourse and discussion. I will tell you this. The public forum is the best idea I've heard. Just like getting the app out there, we had an increased visibility and many other things we're doing. But if we're going to put in the hands of one person and that job, which is an onerous job, if we're going to put in the hands of one person to decide who can speak and who can't, and who can be kicked out and who can't, I won't work here anymore because that's not right. So I urge the fellow members of the commission to accept a motion to have an online forum that has verified email addresses of residents of Woodstock who can speak to the points at hand. And I also put in this motion that it requires a 2/3 vote from the commission to ban any person posting on the forum. I put that to a vote.
Wait, sorry, what was the second part of that?
2/3 of the commission must vote to ban anyone on the forum.
Got it. All right, a motion has been made. Is there a second?
We continue the conversation before we
Yeah.
vote on this. I don't feel
Yeah.
like we've
Well, no, no.
I don't think we've
You're
talked
not-
this
you're
out
not-
yet.
Patrick, you're not being asked to vote. You're being asked to second, and then there's discussion after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, but there hasn't been a second. Is there a second?
Right.
Well, in that case, I'll second.
All right, now we have discussion. I just want to make one point, and Todd, before we have the discussion, I would just ask you if you would consider making the following amendment to your motion. I believe it will be technically impossible, certainly in this time frame and within our budget, to verify that people are Woodstock residents. So you don't have to change your motion. I'm just saying that as a practical matter, I see no way to make that part of it. You're muted, Todd.
What language would you suggest, or what part?
Just
would you
omit that you said that a verified someone, the same thing that you said, but just without the phrase "and Woodstock residents," because
I will omit that from the
Okay.
motion.
all right. So I'm going to assume, if it's all right, that is now the motion, and Patrick, you're seconding that motion. Is that all right? All right. So I'm going to go back. So all right. Let me just say that. So. Yeah, well, I'm thinking about whether we have time for the next topic. So Larry,
John,
Larry, Deborah, I'm just going in order, the same order that was before. Larry, then Deborah, then Patrick.
Okay, I'm in favor of letting people submit whatever they want to submit and waiting to see if there's abuse. And if so, then we moderate it another time. I think I trust the people who would be putting in their comments to be civil, et cetera. And I'm personally not worried about that. I just want two questions, because I just don't know this. A verified email address, does that tell us who the person is? And if not, do we want to know who the person is? And also, why is it 1 week rather than 2 weeks leading up to the final meeting?
Well, I can answer that second question there's only 12 days between the time of that the applications are available and the meeting. And
12 days then.
And because I figured that we needed some time to digest what was written. However, that doesn't have to be the case. So we could do it. We could, yeah. That was the reason for it. So, but it is changeable. I agree. Deborah, and then Patrick.
Todd, God, I love you. You know I do. And we work well together, and we've had our moments going back and forth. But I have to point out something of what happened just now, which is you kind of did what you're asking. You're stopped by putting a motion on the table before we actually even had the people within the committee speak to it. Actually stops a forum from moving forward. We don't know what should be on the table yet. We haven't even all spoken.
Well,
So
the motion
just
leads to the discussion, Deb. That's how this
I know
works.
how it works. I know
So
how it works.
Now
but
we're able to debate the motion on its merits. And
I know, but you're
everything.
wanting people to have a discussion and have the ability to speak. And I just want you to be aware of, for me, what I just heard was almost a threat of like, I'm a valued member of this community and on this commission, but if it doesn't go my way, I'm out. And
Deb,
now let's
Deb, you don't have to
let's vote on that. And now let's put it on the table. So I just want you to be aware
Hold on, one at a
of
time.
what
Deb.
you just did and how that may, and the effect of that. So just something to consider, just something to think about. Okay. The thing about the forum and in general, yes, we can trust people to try to be their best selves on this forum. And I also think it's important to have some guardrails to it. Just because somebody can be an asshole doesn't mean they should be, or that it's good for the community to have a space for them to be. It doesn't mean you're shutting somebody up simply because we're asking people to be civil with each other and putting guardrails around the civility of how we express ourselves on this forum. What kind of community do we want to be? Do we want it to be a free for all? You can be as forceful in your opinion as possible and still be civil and have somebody on this side saying, we're going to stay within these realms of how we communicate with each other and to make sure that somebody's actually monitoring it. They do that in towns all over. And what I would also say is that we can look, there's a difference between what's possible to do in a community when we're together and being able to say, hey, you're being abusive versus what happens online. And what happens online that could really have long-term detrimental effects on people. So all I'm saying is having guardrails around is not giving people, asking people not to be a part of something.
All right. Sorry, Roger, I think Joe's hand up was up before yours. So Joe, then Roger.
John, you're forgetting me.
Okay, and then Pat. Oh, sorry. Were you in there?
Yeah, I was next. I took
Okay,
my hand
sorry.
down to.
Sorry, Patrick, and then Joe, and then Roger.
Okay, I don't think we necessarily need to moderate this. If there's going to be somebody who's going to be foolish and put information out there, the only thing I think if we moderate anything is poor language. Things that are clearly should be moderated. Hate speech, that type of thing. But if people want to have you know, make themselves look silly, you know, let them. You know, it's going to come, you know, one of the things, you know, as a motel, I push reviews and I get a crazy review every once in a while and they look crazy. And I know that people who read it go, that guy's crazy. You know, I think for ease of this, the only thing I think we should moderate this is hate speech, you know, that type of thing. Otherwise, I would agree with Todd. You know, let's make it simple. It's only up for a week. If you know, if people want to prove that they're not too intelligent or that they're mean people, then let them.
All right, Joe, and then Roger.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but what it sounds like Todd is suggesting is just eliminating structure. And if you don't have structure, you have a mob and you get nowhere. And again, like, you know, again, I'll be redundant. This is new. This is the first time we've used this specific process and we're going to learn from it. So, and have to accept the consequences of what happens over this course of this grant approval or disapproval process, and then learn from it. And then, you know, do it better next time. It's as simple as that. We cannot say, you know, no holds barred. You got to have some sort of structure. That's my opinion.
All right, Roger.
I just want to say, and obviously I don't necessarily have a dog in this fight, but you either have structure and a moderator or you don't. You can't decide after the fact, oh, things are going bad, we need a moderator. You either have a set of rules going in and you make sure people follow them or you don't. My strong opinion on any forum is that it should be moderated, but it's not my decision to make. If it's just about foul language, then you can hire AI for that. You don't need a moderator. So either do it or don't do it.
All right, let me, all right, thank you for the comments. I'm gonna, this is, I think, not so much for our specific purpose, but for the community of Woodstock writ large and on a broader range of subjects over the next 5 or 10 years. I think this is actually a really important issue for the community to deal with. I don't think we are able to deal with it fully in the 20 minutes or 25 minutes that we've spent. But nevertheless, we have to deal with it. I want to take, so I'm going to, so we need to have a vote on the motion. I'm going to vote against this motion because I think there's a way for us to have another discussion about this and still, and have some time to consider the various suggestions that have been made. Roger's description of what the guardrails might be, Patrick's suggestion that they be somewhat narrower, you know, hate speech and personal.
John, in the spirit of Deborah's discussion, I withdraw the motion.
Okay, then I'm gonna, thank you for that, Todd. I think I want to pick up on something that Larry said about about the exact timing of this. If we were to have the discussion forum from March 3rd at night through March 10th, or even through March 12th, if we as EDC members want to look at the forum on our own or have someone summarize it the day before for us in a kind of a 1 or 2 page memo, then we can have this discussion on March 3rd. We can prepare the forum technically, we can communicate with the group, we can continue in the spirit, Todd, you can, and perhaps I hope will, remake your, and Deborah wouldn't be opposed to this, I'm not trying to speak for Deborah, you remake your motion on March 3rd. We now know what that is, and Roger has put together some material, Deborah's going to modify that and so forth. So does anyone see a problem from a timing point of view with having a discussion forum from either the 4th through the 10th, or the 4th, which is 7 days, or the 4th through the 12th, which gives us on March 3rd, we don't have to call an extra meeting, we're already going to have extra meetings in March. We won't have to call a special meeting, and we will have time to consider on March 3rd this issue, which I think is very important from a community point of view, much bigger than how this 1 week goes. we could deal with that, moderated or unmoderated. It's not going to be the end of the world. But I think this is an opportunity for us to experiment, to get it right or wrong, to see what happens, and the online world is going to be an important part of Woodstock, and we need to do something better. In my view, we need to try things other than the listserv, which is great. But so are people comfortable with that schedule?
Yes.
And therefore putting this as a central point on the agenda for the next meeting? Is anyone opposed to that?
No.
Roger, are you raising your hand or is it still up from before?
It's still up, John.
Okay. Okay, then I think that's the path we'll take. Roger and Deborah, if you would send out your draft and send it to me too. It needs to be made public because it needs to be made public when you send it to the other EDC members. Do not, please, EDC members, have discussions with the entire group on email. That's not allowed. You can have one-on-one discussions, but not with a majority of the EDC members via email. And we'll post it on the website, and now the agenda is set. All right. I'm going to ask forbearance here for 10 minutes to go 10 minutes beyond 8 o'clock because we have an issue that is actually time sensitive, even though it doesn't seem like it. Joe DiNatale raised the question, and I really appreciate him thinking about this now rather than in August, which I think was when we thought about it the last time, which is what, if we start now, what should we do? What could we do? What role does the EDC play in helping the Woodstock community to plan for the potential crush of people that will come in the summer and in the fall, as we experienced this past year? There are probably things that someone could do, whether it's us or someone else, if we start in February, than if we start the day the bus, the day people are waiting online for 2 hours to have lunch. So I'd just like to get some comments. Joe, maybe you can start off because you brought the point up.
All right, let me, what this is about is learning from history. We got kind of surprised. I wasn't surprised. I think I kind of anticipated it, but the town was surprised by the influx of people that came in such a short period of time. And I have a strong feeling, judging from the comments at the chamber and even coming into the cafe, that there was a considerable amount of disgruntledism with the visitors, particularly on Monday, sometimes on Tuesday, because of the lack of eating venues on Mondays when people would arrive. So with that, and then so we had to scramble around and pushed a couple of panic buttons and try to get something together to accommodate that influx of people. So with that in mind, I think it'd be a good idea if we recognize that, discuss it, and be better prepared for it this year. Some of the thoughts I've had about how to handle that. Well, as it exists right now, what would be available if nothing changes between now and, let's say, June? The eating venues available would be Mount Verde, of course, Soulfully Good, and if we could convince Dr. Corbin's to open for lunch before 12:30, that would be very helpful. With that in mind, my feeling is if we can establish 2 more venues, and I think that's all we really need, 2 more venues where people can buy food, I think that'll handle it. My suggestion would be, 1, if we could discuss it with the people we discussed at the pie lot where we put the picnic tables, if we could put a food truck there on Mondays and have it consistent, have a contract with some vendor. They're going to be there every Monday somebody that we can agree on, and I'm sure that we can find somebody reliable. Like we can talk to Alexis, somebody close. There's a 50-foot stretch of property that is not on the sidewalk. Part of it is gravel, part of it is concrete where Pi had their former patio. That is private property. And if we could get an agreement from those people, I'm sure they might want to say, well, we'll need a little more insurance. I think that probably could be generated from the vendor themselves. So assume that we can negotiate that and get that, and then one other venue. Personally, I'm not happy with putting too much around the green. The homeowners around the green that spend a lot of money buying those places, renovate them, keeping them up, and to line food trucks around the green, I think is counterproductive to what Woodstock is about. I think maybe one more venue, either on the east end of the green. Yes, east end of the green, or maybe on Elm Street, something that can be discussed and worked out. Something other than ice cream, because we already have an ice cream parlor in town that's doing a great job. And I think it would be counterproductive to infringe upon what their hard work is doing. I think that would be enough, and allow some nonprofits, the hockey club or the gridiron club or whatever, to put up a stand when they want to is fine. I think that would handle it, in my opinion, judging from what happened last year. I think part of it that would be helpful too is if the chamber can establish a greeters program for people to be guided to wherever they want to go, and it could cut down a lot of confusion on their part, and would save some time and energy for the visitor. What I think is really important more than anything else, and I mean this sincerely, is the concept of hospitality. People coming here feeling like they're welcomed here, feeling like when they leave and they go home and they talk to their neighbors and family and friends, they had a great time in a great little town in Woodstock. I think that goes far beyond any other kind of advertising we could have. So that's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, can I just want to request, just given the time, that we focus the discussion on the process that we should follow. We have to get to the solutions, or someone does, but I'd like to ask that we try to decide how the EDC should approach this, not what should be done to fix the problem. We'll get to that quickly, but tonight, I'd just like to ask us, if we can, to focus on whether and how the EDC should be engaged without specifying what the solutions or even the problems are. So Patrick, Todd, and Deborah have their hands raised. So go ahead, Patrick.
Okay. I would totally agree with Joe that something needs to be done. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are really the struggle days. I hear it at the motel all the time. And one of the things I think we should do is pull together a couple of people who are restaurants, a couple of people, maybe outside who could help the problem, farmers market, so forth, and consider getting them to help us come up with solutions like schedule. Hey, Montvert's open on Sunday and Monday this week, and they're open on Tuesday and Wednesday next week, and they rotate. So if there's always somebody open, always someplace to go. But I think to enlist the restaurateurs to help with this, come up with a solution, might be a good starting process.
All right,
So
thank you.
That's my thought.
Todd?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Joe, thank you. I think we've asked the restaurants to come together about 15 times since I've been a member of this commission, and no one ever responds. I think it's a disgrace I think they need to owe a debt to the community. I think they need to come together and work with Beth in the chamber to have a unified front to make this town the most successful it can be. Joe, first of all, you know what you're doing. Like, your family is successful here and you do a great job. So unfortunately for me, I'm 50% of your problem solved, because we will be opening the Tassville Country Store, and it will be open 7 days a week. And it will provide all the services that people want as they enter Woodstock as the first thing that Woodstock hits on Route 4 coming from the east. So what that sucks for me and my family is it's going to be incredibly unprofitable. Why? Because what did I just say? The restaurants and the owners of the restaurants refuse to get together and refuse to have a unified front to help this town. And that's what makes it hard for me to work on interior building qualities and exterior frontage for Colburn's and these things, because aren't we a community? Don't we need to service people? And isn't it not so hard to get together and figure out how to be the most profitable bunch? Some people might call that a cartel. Well, it could be the cartel in the best sense of the word, where the Woodstock cartel of restaurant owners, of which there are few and far between, can come together and maximize profits. That's what we want, because that makes the best experience for visitors to go to Patrick's hotel or Joe's store or my store. I think what I see here is that there's a lack of communication. Okay, so people don't want to talk. What I'd love is to hold those people accountable and have it be known that they're not interested in talking. So Jeffrey, you'll talk about, and I love going to you, Jeffrey, because you're so knowledgeable. I mean, I don't agree with everything you say, but I agree with a lot of it, which is bizarro. So it's like we're spiritual animals here. But I go to you and you say, oh, Coburn's, the guy's not, the ladies, the owner's not interested in building improvements or this and that. Okay, well, shouldn't everybody be interested in the same thing, a successful Woodstock? So I think that the EDC's mission might be narrow and the select boards might be more broad, or the village might be more broad. But what we really are talking about here is, hey, we're a community, we're a town, we're a village. Well, we'll be many villages soon if people are following the news. And what we need to do is service people in the best way possible. We need to give them a great experience with the least amount of disruption to the local community. We want someone who lives on Route 4 to not feel encumbered by the traffic of having a fair. Well, how do we do that? We need to solve it. These are many things we need to solve. But I can say that the problem I see with this town as an outsider, of which many people don't like because we talk about xenophobia here all the time, as an outsider who's moved in, let's find solutions and let's hold people accountable if they're not interested. So Patrick, what I would say to you is, what restaurants don't want to be a part of the chamber's group on inviting people to figure out what the most economical sound days might be? And it might not work for them. Maybe the restaurant owner says, Sunday's the Sabbath and I'm not doing it because I go to church and it's not happening for me and I'm closing down. Okay, great. But I think it would be fantastic to get as much information as possible out there for the public to judge where they decide to shop, where they decide to spend their hard-earned money, and what restaurants they decide to purvey, myself included. And it's complicated, but everyone needs to step up, and we can do it. We have great chefs, great restaurants, and the landowners, the property owners, we're all just trying to do our thing.
All right, Todd.
We need to communicate.
Sorry, thank you. All right, I'm just, so Deborah and then Sam, and then I'm gonna make a suggestion for how we proceed on this. Unless Deborah and Sam change my mind. Rachel,
So there's a couple of things so far what we're talking about is the food issue. There's a couple of issues about the crunch that we had, right? Because it's how people felt coming in as the tourists, but it's also what happened to the community at large in town, which I do feel is a big part of the EDC, is making it so it's livable both for the people coming in and the people who actually live here. So I think it would be great as far as process, John. I think it would be great to be able to have some kind of open forum where we're actually saying, we want to hear from people and hear what that crush was for you, because we are, this is one of those moments where we have to put some money aside to handle the crush during this pandemic, that it's a specific time, and this is the kind of thing that the EDC can do. One recommendation that I just want to make as far as the crush is concerned is, and it does come to us being a community, and I don't think it necessarily means welcomers, but it's something that we can have available that people get. It's that when they come into town or wherever there's ways that we're handing out or that are available that are seen, like, welcome to our community. This has been a tough time for the entire world. Please be aware. Please be supportive of the people who are serving you. Understand they're doing their best. Understand that there's more people who are driving up here than going out of the country. Like, just come up with some sort of way of communicating to them, like, can we all just breathe through this? We're doing the best we can. You're coming into our community. We welcome you, but it's a hard time. And so I think that that's a worthy effort. And I also want to ask about the possibility, and I don't know what this would take, but of parking cars just outside of town and being able to bring people in, or, the bikes that are available or whatever, like down where we had the fair, that you stop the cars before they actually come in, and making it more of a walking community during this crush. And that also comes down to potentially bringing in some porta potties at those locations. And those are things that I think, like, that we need.
Wait, Deborah, sorry, we're getting into solving the problem. I think what you're identifying is parking and transportation is an issue that should be included in the discussion. I don't mean to cut you off, but I just.
Yeah, I do. I talking about the crush from a perspective of what it's doing to our community, that it's not just about the food. And I do think porta potties don't have to be a nasty thing. You can get good ones, but we do need to figure out a way to make it more livable for everybody involved. And the restaurants aren't able to handle it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Again, I'm good. Okay. So we're defining kind of the scope of the possible problem, and also some suggestions for what process we could use to address it, and some solutions. Sam, last comment, and then we'll move on. Sam.
Thanks for letting me speak on this. So, as a restaurant owner in town, I have never, besides my own father who's on this committee, coming and being like, hey, I want to have a, put together a restaurant group of people to talk. Would you like to do that? I go, yes, of course. I've never received an email from anyone. I mean, Todd, you mentioned something about, you've said it 15 times or something like that. Besides saying at this meeting, I have never had anyone email me and ask me to be a part of any discussion group.
Terrible, terrible.
I'm happy to do it. I'm here tonight because my dad told me that this discussion was going to be happening, and I thought it was really important. And because it really is.
Sam, I'm going to go to every restaurant, including yours. I'm going to make them get in a group, and we're going to get accountability for this. I'm going to handle it myself.
That's fine. That's great. And I appreciate that. But to say that the restaurant people are not doing their job or are not being accountable to the community is not
No one's saying that. I didn't say that at all.
Sam, we're not saying that at all, Sam. We're saying you guys are overwhelmed and you need help. That's what
absolutely.
Okay, because Todd, it came off a little bit like that was what you were saying.
No, Beth at the Chamber said she's tried to get the restaurants in town together numerous times to form a coalition, and no one's interested. So when we talk to Beth,
happy to do it.
Yeah,
Todd, that's not true. Todd, that is not true.
Hold on, guys. Let me.
Can I just finish my
That's
statement?
incorrect.
You guys are over time, and I really wanted to make this quick.
Sam, go ahead.
Was that I'm happy to do it. Restaurants being open more or having different hours and having it so that more places are open at the same time is a great idea in theory. There is the issue of staffing restaurants aren't open more because a lot of them don't have the
Don't
staff
have
to do
help.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not even if they want to keep the staff they have, overworking them is not the way to do it.
Right.
So being open extra or having, I'm closed 1 day a week, and and I've had some of my staff beg me to be closed an extra day, and I've stayed open because the community needs it, because we don't have enough places to eat.
Yeah.
But what the issue at hand is, and I think it's gone off, and a lot of things that Deb was saying was right too, that it's not just about restaurants. I'm only speaking to that because that's what I know in my experience. But we do need to be proactive about finding some solutions in, having more things for people to come to, having, people would say to you, are you worried about having somebody right across the street from you? And I'm like, no, please put a food truck there every day of the week during foliage.
Sam,
I'm
Sam,
sorry.
are you saying that no one's
Todd,
ever come to you?
Todd,
No, John, this is important. John, Sam.
Let me just
Sam,
finish. I just
Sam,
want to
just
finish
really
and say, I'm
quickly.
sorry, my dogs. But have someplace out there every day during the week during foliage.
Sam, are you saying no one's ever come to you? Because I mean, I believe you. I totally do. No one's ever come to you in your very successful, wonderful business, of which I purvey, and it's fantastic. No one's ever said, hey, would you like to talk to other people in town about the hours or days you're open
guys,
and this nature?
I have.
Yeah, my friend has several times, but I haven't gotten anything from anybody else.
Yeah.
Guys,
I don't think that
I really don't want to get on that point. I don't really feel like that's the point to be talking about.
This is important because I have been under the instruct, while I've been a member of this commission, that the businesses in town have been contacted and asked to join a local business group so that we can better serve the constituents of the community.
I don't think you should use what I have to say to that as word of bond for other restaurants, because my dad is on this committee and is
fair enough.
constantly in confirmation
Your business is fantastic.
So,
guys,
has no one asked you? No, John.
Todd, listen,
no one asked you.
Todd, I need you to,
Todd,
I need
other people. Has no one asked you to speak to other people, Sam, about the days and times you might be open, and it might be advantageous to other communities in the folks?
Sam, excuse me 1 second, Todd. I am the chairman, and I need to ask you and Sam both to pause this discussion. I appreciate
Respectfully, John, I disagree. We've worked in this committee and we've heard from the chamber in this committee's minutes that we've had people go and reach out to the business owners and ask the business owners if they could commit to working as a group to find the best times to have their labor workforce work in conjunction with the people that come to this town that need services in this town. And if that's not happening, we need to know, because the people's money's at stake.
I'm not suggesting that question should be unanswered.
I would like it answered. I would like it answered from the public now.
It doesn't matter whether you would like it answered or not.
I would like it answered.
We cannot get that question answered tonight. We can.
Sam, have people come to you and ask you to join in other restaurant groups to find an appropriate time to perhaps work best with your staff and your staff's needs, mental and physical, to be able to be open for the folks that want to come and do business in Woodstock.
Can I answer that question?
No.
I'm going to answer the question because it's directed towards me. And actually, what I'm going to say is I'm not going to answer your question, Todd, because this has become counterproductive.
I agree.
Conversation. This is what I was trying to say is not being listened to, and all we're being focused on about is this group. So no, I'm not going to answer your question. It's completely counterproductive to what we're talking about.
All right, Sam, thanks for your comment. And Todd, you're raising an important question. I just think that the process of pursuing it isn't going to be advanced by this back and forth dialogue. We absolutely need to understand the facts about whether or not the different organizations, not just restaurant owners, different organizations are or aren't willing to cooperate. We clearly need a cooperative solution. Your suggestion, I mean, I think we would all agree with that. And the facts about whether in the past it has or hasn't happened is very important. My only point is we're not going to get those facts. We only have one restaurant owner. There are 15 restaurants in Woodstock. We only have one restaurant owner on the call here. So let's do what you're suggesting. I just don't think we do it by this process. And so I do think that there's a consensus that we need to do exactly what you were suggesting, Todd, and others have as well, which is to get a group of people together. We will find out, by the way, when we try to get them together, whether or not they're willing to participate. We'll know for sure. If we invite Sam and 12 other restaurant owners and 12 people show up, then we'll know that they're willing to cooperate. And if they don't, then we'll know that they're not, and we'll understand that that's the problem. I think that that's something, and it's not just restaurant owners, as I've made a long list of, like the farmer's market that Patrick suggested. I think there's a long list of institutions, Robbie Blish, for example, to get to Deborah's comments about parking and walking community and so forth. I think there's a large list of people who, Joe, I see you're raising your hand. I'll give you a chance to make the last comment. But I think that as a next step, we do need to convene a group that has collectively could do, Todd, what you're suggesting and what others have suggested as well, which is let's talk now, not in August. Let's talk in February about what are the things that different organizations can do to solve the several different issues, one of which may be the most important of which is food, but there are other issues like parking and visitor behavior and so forth. So let's do that. I think we should, I think the EDC can convene that. And we may want to turn it over to the select board or the chamber or others, but no one has done it and it needs to get done. So let's go ahead and do that. And I think, Todd, that would allow us to hold people accountable if that's something that, becomes critical for us to do. But I think we'll get the answer to your question by doing that.
Look, I apologize for my tact. It's poor. I just want the best for this town. And I see what people are doing, like that cafe, and it's fantastic. And how many hardworking people are going there. And I see open signs all day long. I'm just pissed off. Yeah. So I apologize.
All right. Thank you. Apology accepted. Joe, last comment. Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry you got pissed off, Todd, because it was really probably unnecessary. I've been trying to form a Woodstock Restaurant Association for a couple of months. Well, actually, we started last fall. But because of COVID and staff issues with most of the restaurants, because of the influx and the amount of business that we had to attend to run our own businesses, the opportunity hasn't presented itself to get together. John and I, as a matter of fact, met with the butcher shop one morning to discuss the possibility of him opening on Mondays. And we did make that discussion, and we did approach these people, and other people are being approached. But there's an issue of, well, you got to run your business too.
Yeah.
There's so much going on between the COVID and the influx and all. This just hasn't been time. So to answer your question, there has been that energy, there has been that effort, and there has been that response.
All right. All right. Thank you, Joe, for that piece of for that history and activity that's going on today. I think we ought to convene. I think we ought to convene this group. By this group, I mean a very broad group of people. We ought to do it in February to give us time to think. It may be that when, I think a meeting like that will be complicated and difficult and so forth, because there's lots of pressures and so forth. But certainly if we don't, I don't think anyone else is going to convene it. I don't think it has ever convened, despite perhaps whatever intentions. I think we have to do it soon rather than later, because time is going to be needed to come up with different solutions. So from a process, I also, by the way, just personally am averse to the EDC being in any of these lines of business: the parking business, the shuttle business, the food delivery business, the policing of visitor behavior business, the traffic cop. I don't think we should be doing any of those things. So I think we need to invite all of those people to come and have a discussion about this. And I think we ought to do it in February. Joe, you're the one that brought this up. Are you comfortable with that as a next step that we can take? Let's convene the group. It'll be a mess in terms of the discussion, but we'll hear all the different points of view. And from that, we can decide on a process for trying to move things forward.
I'd be excited about the opportunities, man.
And I think, Todd, I think that meets your, that's.
I would be so excited
Yeah.
to follow Joe's lead on this.
Well, and I think Deborah, and Deborah, I think Deborah, you brought up the point about having about getting members of the, getting the community to basically say what the problems are and so forth. I think this meeting could serve that purpose as well.
It might be two different meetings, the one for the community about what they need in the crush and what the restaurants want to do. I think it's two different meetings.
Well, it's not just restaurants, but
Happy
yeah.
to moderate the community one about or assist on moderating the community one about just gathering facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. All right. So I think that we have a course of action. I mean, this is a tough, knotty problem, as housing is, and all the other. I mean, as all the other issues that we deal with. But Joe, I really appreciate the fact that, despite the intensity of the discussion, I appreciate the fact that you brought it up now again. Otherwise, the same thing would have happened this year. We would have faced in August, there would be a crush. We would do knee-jerk things. They won't have much impact. This is a much better time and place, and therefore a much better way to deal with a very tough issue. I don't know if we can come up with great solutions or some solutions, but we sure have to try. So I think
We'll figure it out, John. I'm sure we can come up with solutions.
Okay, I'm sorry that we went over. Marion, I have broken my solemn oath to you, and I swear this is the first meeting in 6 meetings that has gone 1 minute past 8 o'clock, and I have recordings to prove it. But of course,
I'm vouching for him.
yeah. Anyway, it's 8:27.
Look what you've done, Marion.
I can't believe I did this to you guys.
You don't record half the meetings. This doesn't make any sense.
That's true. I can edit this out so the meeting ends at 8. Can I have a motion to unless
Motion
to adjourn, second, third, fourth.
Todd is second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 8:28.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.